They've recently gone live very successfully with a learning management system, and today we're just going to talk about some of the key achievements and any lessons learned that they can share on the way. So Sarah, if I can start with you, could you tell me a little bit more about the LMS project? Why did you set out to do it and what were you trying to achieve?
Yeah, of course. So development has always been important to us organisationally. You know, we know that if you don't give your people the skills to do a great job for you, they can't do a great job for you. So we've had a learning management system for quite some time, but it had really come to the end of its useful life. It was too old to do the job we wanted. So sourcing a new one was what the project was about. And it was a great opportunity to sort of think about the challenges we had around learning and what we wanted to overcome those challenges, which ultimately was we wanted a system that provided a really sort of new, fresh user experience that would encourage users to visit the site voluntarily, perhaps, and also increase the level of compliance with learning that we really needed people to do. And we also wanted a system that would help line managers keep track of what their team had and hadn't done, which was really difficult with the previous system. So we could know that, you know, we were confident that we'd achieved everything we needed to achieve. So that was the aim of it, really, to make life easier for everybody involved. And we were also quite hopeful that, you know, we might along the way pick up some additional learning content. We've got a vast array of our own content that we build ourselves, but we thought if we can get some external content on different topics, more variety, again, a bit of a different look, it would help encourage people to engage with the learning a little bit more than they were.
Yeah. And I guess it always sounds simple when you start out, you go, we create a draw and we're compliant and we have new technology and new content. I'm sure it wasn't quite that easy. And Liz, maybe you could share, was there any particular challenges on the way or any particular stumbling blocks that you had to overcome?
Well, yeah, hi Esther. Of course, you know, with any project you set out thinking it's going to be dead straightforward, don't you? And along the way there's always some hurdles to overcome. I think, you know, putting in a new learning management system for us is really part of the journey we've got around our people transformation agenda and helping our society really, you know, wrap its arms around our people, and it was following on from some work we've been doing previously around our recruitment systems. So we'd replaced our recruitment system and started to think about how we bring people into our society, how we develop them and how we help them grow and kind of move on within the company. So, you know, it's been part of a much larger transformation journey for our people agenda. And we'd previously come to an end of putting our new recruitment system in. We'd started to free up the resources to start looking at this new learning management system and replace what Sarah, I think, has described as a system that's probably come to the end of its useful life. But of course, that always brings deadlines and interesting scenarios to play. So we knew with the contract we had with the existing system that was also coming to the end of its useful life. And we were starting to get going and ramp the project up at a point in time where we knew we had a bit of a hard deadline around the existing system being available to us. And of course, we didn't want to go into a situation where we had no compliance learning available for our people, because whilst we're doing this for all the good stuff we can put into it, we do have a duty of care to make sure all the compliance training is ongoing and continuous. So we set out with a plan with, I think, about 16 weeks from getting going on the project to having it in. And of course, anything that involves technology requires you to go through all the relevant building and testing and bringing the data in and engaging people and getting people ready for that change. So we set out, we looked at the resources we had, and we identified across the rest of our portfolio we had some gaps in available resources and people to help us along on that journey. And with some absences that were unexpected in the team, we suddenly found ourselves ready to go, all but for a couple of kind of key roles within it that really were going to hold us back. And being a relatively small company, we didn't have the opportunity just to go and nab some people from elsewhere and focus them on this piece of work. So I think our initial hurdles were really about fully resourcing the programme and having the right skills and expertise in place to get going and get moving very, very quickly on something that had quite a small project life cycle in terms of, you know, getting from that initiate phase all the way through to deployment and engaging of our colleagues. So we can talk maybe a bit more about how we went about that and the work that we've done with you, Esther, but certainly I think the relationship that we've got with you and the ability for you to bring on board some expertise that was absolutely fantastic at short notice really did help us get going on the work. So that was probably our initial hurdle, and then of course you get all the other bits that come along the way with we thought it was going to work this way and that didn't quite work, and we thought we had this data, we now need to do it slightly differently, but of course that's the stuff that's always expected in projects and programs.
Yeah, and I think it's a good learning, because I think in particular with those projects where there's a fixed timeline, some people just go in and go, but actually just taking a little bit of time to do the resource planning and really understand what is required does help you set up for success. So, which leads us on to the next question: was it successful? So, looking back, benefit of hindsight, Sarah, are you pleased with what has been achieved, and have you delivered kind of, I guess, the success that you anticipated?
Yes, so the new LMS now has been live for, I think it's around about 5 weeks. And I suppose if you consider that our main objectives for a new system were to increase compliance and increase engagement, then looking at those two things, on the engagement side, we've had loads of fantastic feedback. And I'm being completely honest when I say I can't recall anyone getting in touch with me and saying they don't like it. Or that, you know, can we have the old system back? Nobody has said that. In fact, only last week I had an email from a manager who was telling me that, and quote, the system's 1,000 times better than the old one.
Yeah.
So that's all good. And I think one of our employee directors recently told the rest of the board that he thought it was the best system we've implemented in a long time. So shining praise from him there. So engagement, yes, I definitely think the conversations we have with people from different, so administrators, line managers and learners, everyone seems really pleased with it. It's much easier to navigate, much easier to find things, much easier to see if my team has or hasn't done the learning they're supposed to do, much easier for them to see if they have or haven't done it. But from the compliance perspective as well, we launched one piece of compliance training at the same time as the new LMS. And previously, on average, we probably expect to see around about a 70% compliance figure with that sort of learning. And at this point, I checked this morning, it's at 85%. So that's a great improvement as well. We're really pleased with that. And another success is the fact that I can find that figure out in about 1 minute, whereas previously it would have taken me about 20 minutes with the aid of a calculator. So that's certainly a success from my point of view.
Good, loads of benefits, and it sounds like you've got a real platform for the future that you can build on as well. So now you've got that in place. Liz, I know you mentioned you've got some other benefits that you found that were really useful off the back of this as well.
Yeah, so I think just echoing what Sarah said, and you know, as a user of the system, because of course we're all users of the system, it's there for 8,000 plus colleagues. It's a world of difference from what we had before, in terms of the benefits of having something that's up to date and modern with decent reporting in there. As a manager, I'm able to go in and see exactly who has and hasn't completed the training that should have been completed. But equally, I can see who is taking charge of their own development and logging into different modules and really sort of developing themselves in areas of interest. So, the functionality of what we've put in place is fabulous. And I think it's just so much easier to use for people. They can log on, they can do a piece of learning. Some of the content that we've brought in as part of the content library is quick and easy to do, and actually means that rather than thinking, oh, we've got to do some, this month's training, I'm going to have to nag everybody to go in, everybody to do it, then receive a report from HR to tell me who hasn't done it, then chase them up. I can just nip in, have a look, and actually, if you've got 5 or 10 minutes spare between meetings, you can hop in and you can do some development work. And I think the way that our learners will start to engage with that system is obvious to me as a user. It's easier for me as a manager, and it makes it easier for me to have conversations with my colleagues about how they're taking control around their own learning and development. So I think in terms of the product we've bought, it's fabulous. you know, we had a closure meeting only this week, and we were talking about more than 80% of our colleagues have been in there and started to do some self-directed learning, not just the stuff they've got to be. So they're looking around and they're really exploring what's available, because that system is so much better and easier for them to use. So I think that's fabulous. And I think we've also learned quite a lot along the way about how we can deploy some of these systems that are relatively straightforward and out of the box in short time frames by setting up teams in the right way at the start. So the project manager we had involved was excellent, but she spent a lot of time going through the RACI, who's doing what role, how we were working through that plan, and who was getting on with what at the start, which I think in part really identified the issues we had around some key missing roles, but also having people involved who were dedicated to thinking through the bit they had to do and not being distracted by the fact we've got lots of other project work on and we're dealing with teams who are involved in lots of other things at the same time. You know, when time's against you, you've got to really be laser focused on who's doing what, how are we handing the baton over, and getting to that deadline. And I think my other key learning was that having really engaged business stakeholders was crucial to us on this one. So we had a fabulous business lead, a lady who's been involved in L&D in our business for many, many years. But she came out of the day job and she was focused and dedicated to this, along with Sarah, who obviously is on the call with us now. And I think having that ability for people who knew what they wanted to see, who were really owning that outcome of what we want for our colleagues, enabled the project team to focus on what they were great at, which is, you know, doing all the delivery parts and hooking up the right bits and pieces and making sure things were progressing as they should. Yeah. So I think we had a great setup from the start, actually, on it, and that made a huge difference.
Yeah, and I guess kind of from that, we as 9 Feet Tall worked with the co-op to help deliver that as well. How did you feel that benefited working in partnership with 9 Feet Tall to get to the end goal?
I think having a company that is, you know, whose businesses change, whose businesses this type of work in terms of facilitating change and understanding what needs to happen is invaluable, because in a business with a relatively small change function, you know, we haven't got the depth of expertise that enables us to say, actually, maybe we could do it this way, or maybe there's something we could do there. What we knew was that we had a gap, and we knew what we needed to fill it in terms of a role. But actually, right from the get-go, Esther, I think I called you up and said, aha, we have a small problem. Is there something you can help us with? And obviously, you know, you said yes, of course. But within days, we were sitting on a call where we were able to scope out exactly, this is what we need somebody to come in and be able to do for us. And I think the questioning that you were able to you know, put over to us around, well, have you thought about this, or will they need to be able to do that, enabled us very quickly to get to a scope of work that said, yep, we've got somebody sitting here at 9 Feet Tall who has got that skill and expertise and has previously worked as a supplier you're bringing in on this, and therefore we can add some great value in terms of your thinking on this journey. And I think deploying somebody with that skill and expertise, we could have looked until the cows came home for that particular skill in our business, or gone searching for that out in the market. But actually you had it sitting right there, and were able to kind of deploy that resource very, very quickly. And I think what we also benefited from is it wasn't just somebody coming in and being part of our project team. That person was then backed up with people within your business around the expertise that they could bring in. So I know there was that mentoring support out of 9 Feet Tall, and I was getting regular calls with the account lead around, right, what else are you thinking about? Have you thought about this part of your project? Could we help you with the thinking here as well? So we get what we need, but a little bit of value add as well along the way. And I think the other key learning for me, and you know, it's symptomatic of a business that's doing a lot of change at the same time, is it was somebody there with no distraction. They weren't taking calls on something else. They weren't hopping off for a meeting over there. They weren't, you know, they could get going and get motoring very, very quickly. So I think the output of bringing in somebody specific to do something through a relationship like this means that the value that's driven out of it is very, very concentrated and very, very high, versus deploying that same amount of hours probably internally where you've got lots of other things going off. So I think for us that we really kind of leveraged the benefit of that through the relationship. And I think, you know, speaking to everybody on the project team, the project manager and all the business leads, I think everybody found great value in working with 9 Feet Tall on this. And I think the final thing I would have to say is culture is an important thing. It's incredibly important to us at Central England Co-op, the way we treat our people, the way that we like to work. And I think finding organisations that have a good cultural match also helps. And I think what we had here was a really good sort of cultural match in terms of behaviours and ways of working. You know, relatively laid back but keen to get on with things. Nobody kind of getting bothered about hierarchy or, you know, but just being really clear whose job is it to do these things and how we're getting on with that and getting on to deliver something. Made it really, really easy. So yeah,
and I think likewise from our perspective goes both ways. So I think that openness and transparency, and actually in a way having a fixed timeline, I think a lot of organizations steer away from that or get really nervous. It created a really good focus point, and I think everyone pulled together to make that happen. So I think it's a great case study. I think people always, they're nervous about change, and projects always are started with a bit of trepidation. Will it not go well? But actually it goes to show it can go well. So if you put the right planning in place and you put the right teams in place and you've got the right partner to really make that happen. And I think Sarah, the L&D team and what you brought kind of to the wider organisation to really get that engagement has made a massive difference. So it's been a pleasure. Hopefully our listeners picked up a few little nuggets here as well that will be of use. So well, thank you both, Liz and Sarah. A pleasure talking to you, and I hope all listeners have a good rest of the day as well.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.